Good morning to you. It's a very rainy day here. The sky is crying along with many of us today. May your day be good. I'm Atmadarshan or Laura Santoro, and we're looking at you, your life, your true self, and your spiritual growth, or your growth in any aspect of life through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita. It is quite rainy today. We might have to move the tech. We'll see. I think yes. Anyhow, um, today we're going back in time a little bit. We're going to go back to chapter 15 after being in chapter 16 yesterday. The narrator of the Bhagavad Gita, Sanjay, is said to have the ability to go back in time and to be in any place on the battlefield where this great civil war is happening, and he can relate exactly what's going on. And then that goes into people's memories. What he relates, what he sees, goes into people's memories. And what's interesting is then memories change. What he says to one person is changed into a particular story, and to another person is changed into another story, depending on what the focus is. And this can affect the emotional relevance of the seemingly objective nature of memory as well. So I'm just going to go back real quick to verse 15, 16, in which Krishna is telling Arjuna about the nature of spirit. What is spirit in this world? And Krishna says, there are two types of spirit in the world, unchanging and changing. All beings are changing, and the unchanging is the unending. So from the Gita's point of view, anything that changes is impermanent. And that includes our memories, which is fascinating because today I'd like to speak on something that in my memory is hugely important, but my memory is greatly inaccurate. So I mentioned today is a sad day. It's November 10th. And back in 1975, something happened that affected this whole region of our world. You may never have heard of it, but those of us here remember it and are honoring today as best they can. In fact, at an All Souls Day Mass I was at recently, there was discussion of this very day and this very incident, which is the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And some of you of a certain age may remember that there was a song written by the Canadian poet and singer Gordon Lightfoot, memorializing this epic tragedy. Now, if you haven't heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald, it was a ship on the Great Lakes. And what some of you might not know, it was only about 100 feet shorter than the Titanic, that great ocean liner, because boats on the Great Lakes can actually be built bigger than boats on the ocean, which was also, it appears, the Edmund Fitzgerald's downfall. So, for example, in the ocean, the waves are bigger with greater gap between. So if you have a really long ship and it gets caught on the peaks of those waves, then it'll break in half and sink because there's no support under the middle part, just the front and the end, like. So in the Great Lakes, the waves are smaller and closer together, and the ships can be bigger. Well, there was a hurricane force storm, November 10th. The gales of November came early, as the song says, and the lake turned into an ocean. And it took a long time to figure out what happened to the Edmund Fitzgerald. So if you haven't heard some of this poem, I'll give you the beginning. The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down, on the big lake they call Gitchigumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. And there's some very beautiful language in this poem, like Lake Huron rolls, Superior sings in the rooms of her ice water mansion. So what seems to have happened finally, after a time, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was found, and the ship was broken in half, and so much there was so much speculation on what had happened because the last message that was received from the captain was, "We're holding our own," and then nothing. The ship broke up so fast, kind of like the Titanic sinking fast, but even faster, that nobody had a chance to get a distress signal out. So for a long time, it's like, what happened? And here in this area, there will be bells ringing 29 times, one time for each soul lost on the Edmund Fitzgerald. And one, I think, interesting aspect of this story is when the wreckage was found, the ship's bell was pulled up, and that's what will be ringing today. Um, but also, when the wreckage was found, a new ship's bell with the name of the 29 sailors who passed was put back down in the wreckage. Now, why am I saying all this besides it's had a one, it's very interesting to look at what can have a huge cultural impact in one place, can have no impact in another place. And I think that's the reason why many people in the West are like, the Bhagavad Gita, it's from the East, but it can have some timeless wisdom. But two, I'm mentioning this in relation to memory because I would have sworn that this wreck happened like so long ago. And I was talking to other people who were like, didn't it happen like in the 1800s? Or I thought it was around the 1930s or something. No, it happened after I was born, which makes me feel old as well. But I'm showing you the idea of this memory. Memory changes. And especially as we get to the end or the loss of something, we're getting toward the end of our time together. And it might be fun after the end to go back and look at the videos again and notice, what do you remember and what is different from when you remember. And by the way, there will be something announced shortly about how we're going to wrap up this time together. We'll have a celebration, and then maybe this will change and become something different. Anyhow, um, so I forgot yesterday's dedication to say it out loud, even though it was there. And that was, I talked about chapter 16 is about freedom being divine and bondage being demonic. And my dedication yesterday was to all lawmakers anywhere, even like parents, because they make the law in their house, right? Can you do that with the idea, the freedom, the divinity of those for whom you're making the law for, as opposed to binding them somehow? Okay. And then today's dedication is to Gordon Lightfoot. Some people think the bells should now ring 30 times because he's gone. And two, there's a line in the song, the 29 men are gone. All that remains are the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters. Now, it's been long enough, it's almost 50 years, the grandchildren. So for all of them, for all those who remember, and for all those who remember not just this tragedy, but any other tragedy, and hold it in their hearts, hold in their hearts the souls of those who have gone before, their spirit, which while in the body was changing, but now it's said that freed from the body, that spirit can be unending. All right, practice time. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be sharing a picture, and the thumbnail after this is done is going to be an example of how culturally that wreck has affected this area, so that the skies even cry today. Let's go. Let's go into the sky crying. Switch. All right. Dry my hands before I touch the tech. I invite you today to remember just something. Yeah, bring into your mind something you think you remember clearly, but when you kind of go back and check against the objective evidence, you're like, what? Because even memories change. We think of our memories being accurate and permanent, but it changes. How does it change for us and why? Something to contemplate in the rain. Welcome back. Ooh, that was an interesting one for me. As always, I love to hear your experience. So, my experience was, I was talking about memory, and we might think of it as something far back that time has influenced. But in relation to Edmund Fitzgerald, I almost died in water 3 times. And one time, it really struck me. This is what came to me as I was contemplating the idea of memory, about how memories can be different even within seconds of an event. So it was whitewater rafting. We hit a rock. I flew out of the raft and I was trapped under the raft. And when I finally got out from under the boat and came back up, my friends were frantic. And they said, "You were under there for such a long time. We were worried." And my memory, even right away, was different, or at least it is. My memory of my memory now is that time basically stopped and there was no fear. I didn't feel like I was under that long and I didn't feel panicked at all. I was just like, well, they told me to just kind of move myself up from under the boat and drift and it'd be fine. And it was. It's just amazing how within the course of a few seconds, memories of one event can be so different. And it may also interest you to know that even though I've almost died in water 3 times, I have no fear of it. I find that interesting too. In fact, I love it. So maybe the men in the Edmund Fitzgerald had that piece at the end. I'd like to think so. There's this, my favorite line from the poem is, does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? And I can say I've experienced that. May the souls of any shipwreck find eternal peace wherever they are. May you find peace. May your memories bring you peace. Can't wait to see you again. Bye.